Didn't exist in those days.
Some things that the man is not allowed to wear women's clothing.
Yeah, correct.
That's it.
The Torah.
Read it.
Okay, here we go. Good evening. Right, here we go. Those of you who are joining on live recording. Right, here we go. It says the Gemara. We said regarding the clothing that you got to remember the differentiation between the two cases. Either you were warned once or you were warned multiple times. Depends. If you were warned once, then you transgress once. If you were warned multiple times, then you transgress each time. But we gave an extra condition when it came to garments, is that you have to take it off and put it back on again in order to transgress. If you're just wearing it the entire time, then even though there were multiple warnings, that doesn't make a difference. So a guy told you off every 5 minutes. Someone said, take it off, take it off, take it off, take it off. You don't transgress every time because you've been wearing it. Sorry, because you put it on the first time, you never took it off. Which is an interesting case because you could say that's still considered wearing. What's the action? Is the action when you put it on, or is the action the fact that you're wearing it? The Mishnah seemed to indicate that it's when you're putting on is the issue, not when you're wearing it all the time. Different to shaving. Different to shaving or different to, what was the other case we had?
It makes sense in a certain way because if you know the transgression is putting it on, you know you should not put it on. So you should stop there.
Put it on.
Yeah.
And then once you have it on,
Then you know you transgressed.
you're not transgressing.
No, you've already done it.
You've already transgressed. I'll give you another example where we may see something similar, but different to what you're saying, is a four-cornered garment without tzitzis.
It's possible.
You can't do it. You're not allowed to wear a four-cornered garment without tzitzis.
I'm laughing. I think I've told you the story before. During the World Cup, guys were walking around with the flag on.
Wrapped around their shoulders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, then that becomes a bigot.
Yeah, it's like a cape or I don't know. I saw it.
That's interesting.
I saw it.
That's interesting.
From guys walking.
That happens at weddings as well. Weddings maybe it's evening time.
Remember when we were young, we used to wear ponchos.
Yeah, but that's not cool.
Why? It wasn't always round.
Yeah, okay, it has to. If it has,
Always round.
I actually saw now. I noticed something very interesting. There's a very popular singer. There's a very popular singer called a new up and coming in Israel called Yishai Ribo, who's a religious.
The concert in New York.
He just packed out Madison Square Gardens. 15,000 Jews in Madison Square Gardens came to watch this Israeli performer. He's actually the first Israeli foreign performer to fill out Madison Square Gardens. It's an absolute Kiddush Hashem because he's a frum Jew singing religious songs, and he packed out the stadium. No other Israeli has done this yet, which is quite amazing to see.
Sure.
No. So he has an interesting style. He's actually French origin, and now he's in Israel. And he came up with this new age music. I'll post it on the group. The new age Ochila Lakel, which is actually relevant to now, which many shuls sing today, is actually his. And it came out a year or two ago, and it caught like fire. Many shuls sing Ochila Lakel the way he did it, and he was the first one to introduce this song. Later on, I'll post if I can find it. So he has a cool look. He comes on to stage with dangling long tzitzis and his guitar. He plays guitar and sings. It's a nice mix, and he's wearing these dangling tzitzis. And I just noticed that it's actually not his tzitzis under his shirt. He's actually got this denim looking or dark navy looking shirt in which he cut a slit down the sides, right, and has holes in his shirt for tzitzis. That's his style. So he comes on wearing this dangling tzitzis, very cool, and that's how he performs. And he's got a big following of religious, irreligious. It's all mainly Hebrew songs. So that's why it's a little bit difficult to bring him to South Africa, and he went to Australia recently. It's a tough sell because it's all Hebrew songs and he doesn't really have an English variety yet, but maybe one day. So that's an interesting style. So he cut holes in his shirt and now he has this dangling off his shirt. Yeah, sure. I've seen that as well with runners. What they do is they clip it so that you don't see their sides. They clip it. They have those clips, those studs along the side of the shirt. So you can do that. Yeah, sure. Because that's temporary. The actual shirt itself has a slit. The fact that you pin it together, you can pin it together. It's a temporary pin. It's a temporary clip. So he clips his shirts together, right? And then he's got these tzitzis dangling down. The same trick is used for runners. I've seen this done, that runners who want to wear tzitzis when they're running, one way of doing it is to wear tzitzis under your shirt, which makes it sweaty and hot and uncomfortable. Also keeps them coming up to the neck, you can't even run properly. So one of the ways of doing it is to cut a slit down the side of the t-shirt that you're running in and to attach tzitzis to that shirt. So all you're wearing on your body is your running shirt. But off your running shirt is you got these tzitzis dangling down.
So you cut it to make four corners.
That's right. That's right.
You said your jacket actually has a
The kapata has a rounded corner. The kapata had two corners, and there'll be four corner garments. I've actually seen a kapata. If you don't design, I've seen a kapata design in South Africa and other countries which aren't done by professional kapata makers. They're done by tailors or others that want to try and get a job, and they don't realize this unique touch to it. They design a four-cornered kapata, and then that has to have tzitzis. So you have to go and round off one of the corners so that you don't have to be wearing tzitzis on the garment. From a corner. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, like a flag, and if you want to wear that flag as like a shawl, then you just corner off one corner, and that's the answer. Then you have no problem. Okay, so why do I mention that? Because
What about the scarf?
that's not big enough as a beged. So the truth is, let's go the other way around. You know, the old scarves everyone used to wear in shul. Right? Most probably your fathers wore that. Many of the fathers wore this as talais. Yeah, along the sides. So that's not a kosher tzitzis, to be honest. I mean, I'm not blaming previous generations. That's maybe what they could afford, what they could make. It's not kosher, and the more educated the generation became, the less used those are. Because it needs to be the size. I don't remember offhand the measurement. It needs to be a size of a garment you wear properly. It's normally the whole back. It has to cover at least the back. That's the size of a shirt. It's the size of a garment. I actually wondered the scarf. It's a good question. I had the same question about tefillin. Tefillin of the old days, questionable whether it was properly kosher or not. Very tiny. Not the greatest material. They buckled very, very easily. The actual bayit buckled. And once you have a skew pair of tefillin, it's not so simple. In fact, King David kids and others who shower and gel up their hair before school, often their tefillin starts buckling throughout the high school because water and gel has mixed in it. Especially if they bought themselves or their parents bought them a cheaper. There's different types of hide. A thicker hide called gasot, which are thick tefillin, can handle a bit more. But the thinner ones, which is really what the old generation used, coming from a sheep, much thinner, they buckle with any foreign type of liquid that touches them. I had the same problem in yeshiva. I used to go to the mikveh before davening. And when you go to the mikveh and you walk out of the mikveh with wet hair, and then you go to shul to daven, you're putting your tefillin on wet hair. So what we try to do is, in some yeshivot you have learning before davening, not all, but some yeshivot have learning before davening. So I try to get to the mikveh before the learning. Then
I'm saying.
Hello, good. In today's world, you can choose not to go to the tefillin min. You can just ask to go to the discussion group rather instead, and that's also okay.
So here, you puts the goblin ones, it's just one area.
Yeah.
And even though he's waiting the whole day.
That's what we're discussing. So I know. Go on.
From the shades of his sideburns, and then
Not the sideburns. We're talking about the beard.
the beard, and then the area carries on until church.
Each time as he cuts. Oh no, we're talking about the Nazir. Each time he cuts a hair, the avera continues.
But before that, we spoke about how if he cuts off the sideburns, then the area carries on is live until maybe I'm just remembering until they hit.
We learned that. You sure?
So we had a question about it.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe
I think it's the act of cutting it off, not the fact that you don't have hair right now. Yeah, each hair you cut off, not the fact that you don't have the hair. I don't think. From what I recall.
I'm not
Okay, so let's get back. So I brought you the example of tzitzis, for example. So let's just understand tzitzis. Every moment that I wear tzitzis, well, that's my question. I don't know. If I wear a four-cornered garment and I don't wear tzitzis on it, how many transgressions have I transgressed? That's my question. Is it the putting on that was the issue? So it's a once-off transgression, or is every moment that I wear the four-cornered garment without the tzitzis on it, is that the prohibition? So it's the same discussion. It's the two sides of the equation. We're speaking about the transgression of wearing kilayim. So it's the same point. You're wearing a forbidden garment. How many times do you transgress? I'm asking the same question with regards to tzitzis. You're wearing a four-cornered garment. You definitely put tzitzis on. How many times have you transgressed? So according to the Mishnah, it's the moment that you put it on that's the issue, not the fact that you're wearing it continuously. That's how we looked. So each time you got a warning, you took it off, you put it on again, and that's how you moved on. But if you just kept it going, well then,
As a separate question, the Mishnahs, he started at a point in the Mishnah, and now he's the Gemara is starting at a different point to the Mishnah.
meaning not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning of the Mishnah.
Yeah,
Shouldn't he be-
it means that there was nothing for them to discuss in the beginning of the Mishnah.
Okay.
So that was
So what's it in Pakabot we say about discussing first things?
Rishon,
first?
Achron, Achron. Yeah. So if you skip a section and you don't address a section, it means that the first section was okay. Never agreed to it. Now we raised the issue that's problematic. Okay, so let's go on to the Gemara. I'm gonna Bibi. All right, Amar Bibi, Amar Yossi, Poshet, Veloivesh. The Mishnah said you got to take it off and put it on again. Loivesh mamish, does it literally mean that he has to put it on properly again? Afilu machnis amoitzi beisyad unkuli shaloi. Or perhaps just taking out your sleeve out of it is enough. What type of removing and donning are we talking about? Is it literally taking it off and putting it back on again? Or just removing the sleeve, is that good enough? And that way I've shown that I've disengaged and re-engaged, so to speak, with the garments. Machli Rav Acha Breda Vika. So Rav Acha demonstrated Ayule v'apuke. He demonstrated what it means to slip in and out of this garment. If you look at footnote 12, what does that actually mean? What does it mean he demonstrated in and out? So the Rivan, which is a commentary on the Gemara, says he understands that this to mean that Rav Acha demonstrated the complete removal and donning of a garment, thus teaching that only in this way is one separately liable. According to the Rashbam, another commentary, however, Rav Acha demonstrated slipping his arm in and out of his sleeve, teaching that even this act suffices for separate liability. It reminds me of when a child puts the jersey or the dress on wrongly, right? Back to front. The simple thing is just take the sleeves out and swing it around. You don't have to take off your head. You know, I often think you have to take it off your head and put it back on again. No, you don't have to do that. Just take your sleeves out and then swing it around and you're okay. Just a quick way of dealing with kids. So here is the question, do you have to take the whole thing off or is just one sleeve out considered enough? So Machvei Rav Acha Berei Rav Eka. Okay, we said that. Right, so it comes along Rav Ashi, and Rav Ashi says, Afilu lo shah elo kedei lifshoit v'lilboish. It's not so much about removing the garment, but if he waited enough time following each warning, he stood still. That's an interesting one. He stood still following each warning for the amount of time that in theory it would take to take it on and off. Chayav is liable for Malkus. Why must he stop? Interesting one. Why does he stop, stand still? So the footnote 13. For during each such time segment, he's regarded as donning the garment again and transgressing again. However, the question arises: the law is that one does not receive malchus for a transgression that involves no action. We learned this. If there's no action to a transgression, meaning if just you sat there and you transgressed, for example, not putting on tefillin. No, that's not a good example because that's a positive commandment that you didn't do. It's not a good example. It's a negative commandment where there's no action involved. That you ignored. A prohibition that you transgress without action. Wait. Okay, so leaving over the Paschal lamb after Seder night. It's not for us, so it's not so practical for us, but just an example. The Korban Pesach, you didn't finish the night of Pesach. If you didn't finish the meat of the night of Pesach, you transgressed. You were supposed to finish the whole meat. Because why families got together and they combined families because they had to finish the meat of the Korban Pesach. So if you didn't finish, did you do an action? No, I just didn't do anything. I couldn't finish it, so I just left it sitting there on the table. Leaving it sitting there on the table is not action. It's called a lav she'ein bo ma'aseh. It's a prohibition that has no action to it.
Example, something more.
Okay, so more practical.
Doesn't sound like a prohibition. You have to eat it.
But it says you have to eat it and you can't leave it over. That's the prohibition.
You finish it.
You have to eat it and you can't leave it over. There's a prohibition linked to it. Another example would be I wonder if chametz would be that. Making leavened bread or letting bread rise. It's a bit tricky, this one. Letting bread rise till it's to the point of chametz on Pesach. Yeah, exactly. Not keeping it 80 minutes. So there, I'll tell you why it's a little bit different. But there you did the process of baking. You then put it into the oven, and then you left it there, and didn't go back to get it out. Which is one of the reasons we don't produce matzah on Pesach ourselves, or no production cycle will run a matzah cycle in case something goes wrong and it leavens. You've created a chametz on Pesach. It's too much of a risk. But let's say you left it there on Pesach. That's an example.
To make his matzah
before Pesach, just before Pesach. Just before Pesach, because it was fresh off the oven. Yeah, before. Sorry, you're right. Before the morning. Yeah, exactly.
You do it before, later.
Right, before 11 o'clock. Because otherwise, after that, you're done. So that's another example. Lav she'ein bo ma'aseh, it became chametz without doing an action. It just sat there in the oven. I've been in an oven factory. Yeah. No. You need a proper. You need a Pesach ticker space, and you need a proper wood. Not electric. I don't know why electric, because the chametz around the side. You need a bit oven.
They used to have like the kids,
Yeah,
demonstration.
they still do it. They still do it. Yeah.
Used to be at the pick and pay at lunchtime.
They still do it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of another example where we have a prohibition. I'll love it. Anyway, it'll come to mind. So let's get back to this. So now the question is, he's not doing anything wrong because now there's no action. There's inaction, right? So you're just waiting there, but you haven't. Here's my question: like, but you're still wearing it. But that wearing is not considered the action. That's what we said, right? Just because you're wearing it. Okay, so why then does one receive Malchus for merely remaining clothed? That's the inaction. You're remaining clothed in the forbidden shatner's garment. Okay, so Tosfot answers that since the beginning of the wearing of the shatner's garment occurred through an action of donning, the passive continued wearing of the garment is considered an action.
It's growing.
Because you started with an action. You better close the doors. The door's closed.
It's fine, I don't mind. It's really bad.
Baking the matzah, that was the action.
And then someone warned you that if you
Although that wasn't really, it's a bit different because that wasn't a prohibition to start baking the matzah. Which one? So exactly. Whereas the moment you put the garment on, that was the issue. And that's Rachel, it's not a baby. I did that already. This is another story. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna bring her once.
Very brief. They used to vomit. The more you left them crying, and they used to vomit. So I decided I'd rather pick in my bed than having to clean up the vomit. I was hard with my 2 houses, but the third one, in a lot, he got away with it. The bad dream.
Yeah, what's a bad dream? Okay. Okay, so let's get back to this. So does one receive Malchus for remaining? Okay, so he answers and he says, because you started, the passive continues. All right. Okay, so that's how he answers this point. So he says, the fact that you waited enough time to, in theory, take it off means that the prohibition of your donning continues throughout. Now, what's interesting is he asks you to stop. You have to stop, stand still. I don't know if that's a literal translation. Why must I stand still? Why can't I just keep on walking around? Is it specifically standing still? I see, but that's the Askol's translation of Shah. I would say means just. Yeah, it does mean to stop and wait. Why must I stop and wait?
Maybe by wearing it and moving, you're creating more virus.
Unless you say that the moving is part of the same action of the donning initially. The fact that I'm moving with it is part of the same action. Very interesting.
I say rather do one available than two available.
The fact that he stops still. Okay, don't know. What? Oh, here, there's Tosfos here. Oh, Tosfos here says once again. And without stopping, right? Tosfos said, without stopping, then you won't be guilty.
He's saying without stopping. You talk
No,
about
no. He says you have to stop. He says if you don't stop, you don't stop not.
He's going to take it back to the shop. Get a credit.
So he does say, he says the donning and the walking is linked. If you're still walking around, while wearing it, it's part of the same activity. You went for a walk, you got dressed, you went for a walk. You're still walking, it's still part of the original wearing of the garment in order to go on a walk. But if I stop, which means my activity has come to an end, and now I could have the choice of taking it off and resting, so to speak. But I choose to stop there enough time that I could have removed it. And I didn't remove it, although it's inactive, we go back to the original donning, which is the prohibition. Interesting law. That's a very strict law. Exactly. The fact that you're associating it back to the original point. I would say the same thing would apply to tzitzis, maybe. I don't know. I'm sort of assuming that how do we know if every moment an avera? Well, it depends. If I would apply the same rule. If I'm walking around as part of the original activity, then it all goes based on the moment I wore my garment and then I went on the activity. But if I stopped my activity and I could have then removed the garment from off me, but I chose to wear it, maybe it kicks in again. Don't know. I'm not sure about that detail. I'll tell you where else we see an example of this. This is the hypothetical case. You could have taken it off, and you chose not to take it off, and therefore you go back. It's considered that's considered the action, so to speak. It's a little bit different because there's associated to your first time. No, don't know if you're associated to the first time. Interesting. I often tell the chassanim, the grooms that they get married, is that after the chuppah, Shmuley was a chuppah gabbai for many years.
Take it off.
After you go to the chuppah and you go to the yichud room, the halacha is, or the time that we leave them there is for 7 minutes. So they always say, why 7 minutes? The answer is because it takes 7 minutes to be intimate between man and woman. I said, I don't suggest you utilize that time in the yichud room. What was that? Why 7? Chachamim put a time to
it. He's boasting. That's just really good one.
So I'll say. So the lesson that I say that the fact is we need a union of the two of you, and I actually take them through the journey. I said first. I said first it starts with the chuppah, then it starts with the yichud room, and then obviously the mitzvah is actually after the reception and after the chassan and the wedding is over, and it goes in a series. It's a build-up towards their exclusivity to one another. Starts under the chuppah, where the chassan takes the chuppah as his home, and the kala joins him there. Then the same thing applies in the yichud room. There's more privacy there, and obviously when they go home alone, that's the consummation of the marriage. But the concept of in hypothetical terms, hypothetical time, you had the opportunity to be alone, exclusive, and intimate, and for that. That's a union of husband and wife. That creates a sense of union. And the truth is like this: there's three things that acquire husband to wife in halacha. It's the beginning of tractate kiddushin, right? The first is kesef, monetary value. So that's the ring, where he gives her a ring, and in exchange for the ring, he acquires her as a wife. The second thing is a ketubah, or a shtar, a document. By giving her a shtar, a document, that also creates a bond. And the third is sexual intimacy. It's called bia, coming to one another. And that also is part of it. So therefore, we want them to consummate that marriage, to be together. And the way we do it is we put them into a room for 7 minutes, and hypothetically, they could have had sexual relations with each other. That then connects them, so to speak, to one another, because in same theory as here, they could have if they wanted to. And then obviously the ideal is that eventually they should, on that particular time. Actually, we encourage them to stay sober and stay awake to be able to consummate the marriage. So that's I'm seeing a link here, because there also the hypothetical time that you could have had sort of serves as that bond between the man and woman. Same thing here. The hypothetical option of removing and donning serves as the action. It's slightly different here, because here it seems like, based on the footnote, that we're associating it back to the action. We're saying, but you put it on originally. And if you put on originally, this is a continuation of that original donning. It's a slight small detail difference. Okay, let's get back into the Gemara. So now we're going on to the bottom of the left-hand column, and we're getting to that case that we spoke last week about the 8. We spoke about that case of the 8 sins or transgressions. Says the Gemara, Yesh choresh telem chulu. There was a case where one plows a furrow, and there's 8 prohibitions that are linked to it. And we mentioned one of them is sowing the kilayim and planting, or what was the word we used? Not planting, but grafting in the vineyard. So you connected 2 fruits to one another in the vineyard. Okay, so we're going to discuss a little bit about that now. Or just one paragraph. So Gemara says, they had a chabura like us here, a convention, a gathering, and they voted about this. Nimnu v'gomru, they voted and decided. Just by, we said this last time, just by covering the seeds with earth. So you didn't do much. Just by covering the seeds with earth. So did you actually take the seeds and bury it? Or were the seeds lying there and all you did was take the soil and cover the seeds? That's the question. You have to actually take the seeds themselves and plant it, or do you just cover soil on the seeds, and by doing that, you've already created the prohibition? So we're saying over here that just covering the seeds with the earth is already problematic. If you look at footnote 15, it says the Chazon Ish suggests, and the novel teaching is where the mingled seeds would have taken root and grown even without being covered by earth. So, yeah. In other words, they would have taken anyway. They would have taken anyway. Otherwise, it would, if they would not have taken anyway, it would be obvious that covering them constitutes sowing. In other words, we're talking about a case where he's taking sand and he's covering the seed. Says the Chazon Ish, that's obvious. Why should it make a difference whether he puts the seeds in or whether he covers the soil on the seeds?
Because it won't germinate.
Oh, no, so he's what?
It won't germinate.
If what?
It won't grow if it's not covered.
No. Oh, that's what you're saying. Because he's pointing out that it would grow. He's saying it would grow in its own.
Certain things will, certain won't.
Okay.
That's why you got to plant.
Yeah. Anything from 65 things.
We're speaking to professionals here.
Yeah, mustn't close this.
What he's suggesting is that the seeds there would have caught anyway, and you coming along and putting the soil on doesn't necessarily help it, and you still transgress because you did your action. That's what he's saying. That's the chiddush. That's the novel teaching here. Even though the seed would have, you know what would have happened? What would have happened anyway is the seed would have sunk into the soil. Eventually. Only for rain. It's a mixture in the vineyard. It's an outside plant coming into the vineyard. Yeah. And who mentioned that grafting is often done from the roots out? Right? From the stem, yeah. So I'm saying you're putting the seeds in by the stem, and it will grow into the vineyard. Maybe that's what it means. Don't do kilayim. Don't grow after work. Yeah. Okay. So now let's see here. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says to Rabbi Yanai, the last teacher, Lav Mishnaseinu Hizu. Is that not our Mishnah? Well, you just taught now about covering the seeds with the soil. Is that not our Mishnah? Our Mishnah, and he quotes the Mishnah now. Our Mishnah says, Yesh choresh telem echad. There's someone who digs this ditch, this furrow in the ground. V'chayev alav, and he transgresses mishum shmoin alavin because of 8 prohibitions. Next line. And what are they? Achoresh b'shor. He's quoting the Mishnah. Achoresh b'shor b'chamor. If you plow with a donkey or an ox, v'hein mukdoshin, and they're dedicated to, and consecrated. The kilayim, and they're kilayim b'keren. So now we said you can't plant kilayim. So high choresh, when you talk about this choresh in the Mishnah, this guy who's planting, which the mechayim mishum kilayim, and he's transgressing the issue of kilayim. How exactly do you understand this case about the guy who's plowing the furrow and planting mixed seeds into the furrow? It's the same case. So why are you teaching me this din if it's a clear Mishnah that says it? You can't put seeds into the ground and you transgress. So he says, Lav de mechase bahade da'azul. Is he not talking about a case where he covered the seeds, the mingled seeds, actually, in this case? He covered the mingled seeds while he was going with his plow, and we're saying that this covering constitutes sowing. So why must you tell me that putting soil over the seeds is a problem? The Mishnah already said it. The Mishnah said that while you're digging the furrow, you took the soil and you covered the seeds. So I know that for the Mishnah. Once I have the Mishnah, it's a precedent. I don't need the Gemara to teach me this. I already know this. So it says Rabbi Yanai, Amalei, he explains the following: Ilav the delay loch chaspa. Mi mashkachas marganisa tuta. If I had not lifted a shard for you, that means a rock or something. Had I not lifted up the rock, would you have found the pearl? That's his analogy. If I hadn't taught you my statement about covering, you would have interpreted the Mishnah to be something else. It's only because I taught you my statement about the covering that's how you now understand the Mishnah. Very interesting point. So without my insight about covering the seeds, you would have understood the Mishnah completely differently. By the way, how would you have understood the Mishnah? If not covering the seeds with soil? Simply taking the seeds and planting the seeds in the ground. That's how you generally would have understood kilai. He dug a furrow
For a purpose.
He dug a furrow. While he was doing the furrow, he threw seeds inside. That's how I would have normally understood with the Mishnah. Even though you could say that's not part of the same action. It's a separate action. We spoke about that. Remember the garments he was wearing at the time? He's wearing the shatnez while he's doing it. Okay, so you could have understood the case to mean that you took the seeds while you're plowing and you throw the seeds into the furrow. I now helped you understand that it's not only in such a scenario. You don't have to necessarily take the seeds. The seeds could have been lying there anyway. When you were digging the pit, you took the soil and you threw the soil over the seeds. That was your problem. And by throwing the soil on the seeds, you then planted this mixture of kilai. And that's what I taught you. And the fact that you now go back to the Mishnah and you interpret the Mishnah the same way as me is because I took off the shard, I took the rock off, and I revealed it to you in a way of better understanding. So it's basically an argument of context. What did the Mishnah mean? When the Mishnah said you transgress kilayim, what did the Mishnah mean? Did it mean you're throwing seeds into the ground, or did it mean you're putting soil onto the seeds? You could also say,
See that, so I'm just looking at 18, how it describes it.
number 18, this explanation, right? And are not taught that the plower is liable for kilayim on the grounds that he is covering the seeds, is tantamount to sowing. You would have thought that he's liable for maintaining the kilayim, in that he saw it growing while he was plowing and did not uproot it. That's the prohibition. Interesting, a little bit different than what I explained. The Gemara will proceed to explain that Rabbi Akiva holds the person liable for maintaining kilayim. Hence, without Rabbi Yannah's teaching, we would have thought that our Mishnah follows this opinion on the kilayim issue. A little bit different to how I explain it.
You're saying there that the problem was there before.
And he left it.
I don't think Paddy has knowledge of it.
Yeah. Or that he knew that the seeds were mixed.
Yeah.
By the way, that's a lav she'emo maser. Leaving kilayim, mixed seeds that you know is wrong, and leaving them to grow, he's saying you transgress. You may not get Makkos because there's no action involved in that. But the fact that you knew about it and you didn't separate them is a problem, right?
That would also mean that should be a piece of the project if you allow it to grow.
No, not necessarily.
Only in the seven.
No, not necessarily, because the prohibition was to allow it to grow. Now that it's grown already and you produce a fruit, can you eat it? I think you're allowed to.
You've changed the shape.
But so the action, what was wrong is the fact that you changed it, not the fact that you ate of it. Because now that it's already produced, I think with the Rabbanon there may be an issue of eating it. Somebody rings a bell.
It's actually benefiting from it there.
Yeah? Yeah. But it's different to chametz. Because chametz, it tells us you can't make chametz and you can't eat chametz. There's 3 prohibitions in chametz. Cooking it, by the way, so mix, so touching, it's specifically when you mix it with heat. Cooking it is the issue. Selling it is the issue. Very strict. You can't even sell. What?
This is also meat and milk.
Okay, it's the same thing. 3 prohibitions. Cooking it, selling it, that means benefiting from it, and having it. Now that's different from meat and milk. Meat and milk, you can keep safe in your fridge. Why the 3 times of kashrus?
You don't keep it if
Cooking.
it's covered. As long as it's
Cooking.
touches everything.
You can. Chametz you can't have, treif you can have. Yes, there's no prohibition. Chametz you can't own.
It's practice.
What do you mean there's practice? That's right, maid's food can be in the fridge. Not ideal to mix the fridges, but I'm just saying, if there was a separate fridge for your maid, you can do that. Chametz you can't own in your own home. So just having it there. That's a lav she'ein b'masa, actually. Having chametz in your home on Pesach is a lav she'ein b'masa because there's no action in that.
You sold it. It's not yours.
Yeah, but true. But you're not allowed to leave it out. Generally, the Chachamim said that even after you sell it, I'm talking about we didn't hide it away. You left it out in the fridge, and maybe even intentionally, by the way.
You can't use a fridge.
But even intentionally, you left it out. That's a lav she'ein b'masa. Because what did you do? You didn't throw it away, so you left it there, sitting there. But I'm saying, let's say you didn't clean properly. Let's say you left rolls in your pantry. Let's say you didn't clean. That prohibition is a prohibition that had no action to it. You just left it there. You didn't not take it away. It will be, yes, absolutely it is. But so your entire kitchen is chametz without a specific action of yours. It's an inaction. If you don't clean your place for Pesach, you've transgressed the prohibition through an inaction. You didn't do anything. It's still a prohibition. You may not get lashes. No, you didn't do that. You didn't do that. But that's not a mitzvah. That's not a biblical commandment. That's a custom. You didn't transgress. So if you didn't take a feather and a spoon and clean and didn't do anything, What have you done wrong? The answer is, you're owning chametz. What action did you do in order to own the chametz? Nothing.
Even if you've solved the fact that you can't see the chametz. So if you've solved
The argument, you can say it's not yours. You can see someone else's chametz. You can pass by a bakery and see someone else's chametz. So in theory, you could leave something lying around your house, even because you sold it. But the Chachamim said that they don't want that. You shouldn't leave it lying around. Because you may make a mistake.
also that someone else may see the chametz and think that you own it.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's go back. All right. Amalei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. So let's see this. Reish Lakish says Rabbi Yochanan, Ilav the Kilsach Governor Rabbah. If this great man, the original person who said this last din, Rabbi Yanai, if he didn't praise you, and agree with you that the prohibition is putting soil over the seeds, so it seems like Rabbi Yochanan was of the same opinion, right? Yeah, if Rabbi Yanai's statement did not support your interpretation of the Mishnah, i.e., soil on seeds, Havamina, I would have thought Masnisin Mani, who is the author of our Mishnah, maybe I would have interpreted our Mishnah to be a little bit different. Okay, so had Rav Yanai not supported your opinion, had Rav Yanai not suggested the idea of soil on seeds, I would have thought that the Mishnah is to be interpreted differently. I would have thought that the author of the Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva, and let's see what his interpretation was. So Amar, and he says, and the Kayim Kilayim Loike. He who maintains, this is our discussion, he who maintains Kilayim, meaning he sees the seeds mixed together, he sees the plantation in place, and he doesn't say a word. That's how I could have interpreted the Mishnah. The fact that you saw Kilayim, you didn't separate it, and that was the issue. Look at number 20, footnote 20, the first footnote on the next page, 21b3. Reish Lakish tells Rabbi Yochanan, I could have thought that when the Mishnah holds the plower liable for Kilayim, it is following the dissenting opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who holds that one is liable for maintaining Kilayim. Maintaining means you kept it there. And we would presume that those Tanoim who argue with Rabbi Akiva and exempt from making Kilayim, for maintaining Kilayim, would exempt also for covering Kilayim. Okay. However, now that Rabbi Yanai has agreed with you, Rabbi Yanai was the origin of this statement. Covering seeds of Kilayim is tantamount to sowing them. We can say that the Mishnah reflects the opinion of all Tanoim, all people. Okay, it's quite technical here. But now that you've taught us this din, we can now interpret the Mishnah to be based on soil on action, basically action-based. I would have thought initially that there's no action related. I saw the Kilayim, I left it there, I transgressed. That's quite harsh. That's quite harsh, right? You saw a mixture, you didn't do anything about it, it's yours, you didn't do anything about it, or your farmers did it for you, or your animals prepared it for you, I don't know who would have set this up. You came by, you saw the mixture, you didn't say a word. That's how I could have interpreted it to me. Now that you've taught me this concept of soil on seeds, that's what it means. And you put the soil on the seed. There was an action involved in putting the soil on the seed. So now what the Gemara does now, and this with the last paragraph, is that it wants to understand Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Rabbi Akiva has a very, we're not going with Rabbi Akiva's opinion. We're not aligning our Mishnah to Rabbi Akiva anymore. But now that we mentioned Rabbi Akiva, now that we mentioned Rabbi Akiva, let's discuss him a little bit. What's Rabbi Akiva's principle? Rabbi Akiva's principle is when you see an Aveira and you don't say anything, or you choose to ignore it, you've transgressed. That's quite a It's quite a novel idea. Well, I think civilly would be the same case, no? If you see something taking place, a murder taking place, or what robbery taking place? Which, by the way, I actually heard a shir about this, is that this justifies the throwing of stones. Meaning there may be other avenues of educating something. So there could be a loving way of educating them. But if I carry responsibility for your transgression because I didn't say anything, then that should allow me to throw a stone, so that I show my disapproval of an action. That's what Lewis is saying. If I just sit there and watch it, well, then I've transgressed. I saw an act being done, I didn't stop it. It's a bit different in the case of a car because there's a driver in there. Whereas kilayim, it's already planted. The point is, the principle is the same. Have you shown your disapproval? That's the question. And so when you see wrongdoing and you choose to turn a blind eye and to ignore it, it could be theft, it could be other issues. Do you have the obligation legally to say something and try and stop it? That's what we're saying. So Rabbi Akiva is very strict. Rabbi Akiva says if you don't do something, says this is lav she'ein b'maaseh. It's a transgression that you didn't act anything. You just saw it, but you should have said something. Let's see more about Rabbi Akiva's view now. So he says the Tanya menakesh. It's a little bit different. A menakesh pulls out weeds. A mechape covers seeds. Bekilayim. Either way, loike. So he pulls out the weeds or he covers the seeds. There's an act there. He transgressed. Rabbi Akiva, this is where Rabbi Akiva comes in. He says, Af hamekayim, even someone who left it grow. If you left it to grow, you have transgressed for maintaining it. Interesting. Says the Gemara. Let's go to the next case. My time with Rabbi Akiva. What's the reason for Rabbi Akiva? How does he know this? How does he know from the Torah? He says the Tanya because he brings a brisa. What does the brisa say? It says in the verse, Sadcha lo tizra kilayim. Don't sow your field with kilayim, i.e., a mixture of seeds. Ainli elazareah. That verse says tizra. Tizra means to plant. Plant is a proactive action of putting the seeds into the ground. Mekayim minayim, but where do I know that maintaining is also a prohibition? Leaving the status quo or letting it grow. Tamaloma kilayim sadcha lo.
You party to the action for not acting.
Interesting. He takes out the word tizra. He says, stop the sentence before tizra. And he compares it to an animal. Do not mate the animals. I think what he's saying is, you left the animals to mate, unless you forced it. Let's see footnote 23. The Torah could have worded the verse more straightforwardly. Behemtecha kilayim lo tarbiyah. Don't mix your animals kilayim. By shifting the word kilayim into juxtaposition with tzadcha, with the field, so it indicates that we are to read the three words kilayim tzadcha lo together. So you see, without the word tizra, kilayim in your field, lo, don't do it. Okay, that's the hint. Kilayim sadcha, kilayim in your field, separate it. Not necessarily linked to the word tizra, forcefully planting, but just the fact that you have kilayim in your field, lo, don't do it. That's how Rabbi Akiva interprets this. I actually wonder whether he would apply this principle across the board. So Lewis, you said this could create ramifications in every area. Maybe what the Gemara is saying is that because there was a particular verse and a particular interpretation, it's only specifically designated for this principle, because Torah, that's the rule in Torah. In Torah, we don't apply precedence in Torah unless there's tradition that allows you to apply precedence. Because if the verse spoke specifically about this particular prohibition and the wording alluded to something, it's only considered here. You can't say, well, then if that's the case, maybe apply it to A, B, C, D, unless it's a direct link that allows you to do so. For example, we gave examples previously. Gezerah Shava, there's a word here and there's a word there, and you can connect the two. Or Kal v'chomer, light and heavy logic allows you to compare two cases. But if you don't have that comparison, you would say that the law only applies in this particular situation, doesn't necessarily apply in other situations. And therefore the ramifications wouldn't be as far reaching in that case. Okay, we'll stop here. Pretty gonna be 3.